Then, Tom.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this session. So this session is basically an outline of Kier's approach to delivering net zero with focus on scope 1 and 2. Next slide, please, Jade. So just to make some brief introductions, my name's Tom Howden. I'm an environment manager. I'm the environment manager for Kier Infrastructure. I'm joined by Jade Hunt, who will also be leading this presentation. Jade is the Group Environment Manager for Kier Group. And we're assisted in this by Gillian Allen, our Business Development Manager in our Regional Civils team, and Martina Kotikova, an Environmental Advisor, recently joined the group. In terms of points of contact for business and works, Phil Ramsey is our General Manager in the Kier Infrastructure Regional Civil side. He's currently leading delivery of the EA framework in the Southwest. Next, please, Jade. So as we go through this presentation, please feel free to ask any questions about this presentation in the Q&A button, which is up in the top right-hand corner. And we will answer these questions in a short 5-minute session at the end of the presentation. And after the presentation, we're going to open up to an interactive workshop where we are going to invite you to contribute. So looking for your ideas about how the industry and your business is helping to deliver carbon net zero, some of the barriers you've come across, successes, some of the enablers in your organizations, or what you think needs to happen. And if you'd like to contribute, please click on the button, ask to share audio and video, and hopefully you will join a long and keen queue of people looking to get involved in this. As we're going through this, please feel free to continue to use the Q&A box, and then we'll hopefully get around to a 5-minute final wrap up at the end. Next, please, Jade. So what are we bringing to the table in this session? Do we really believe that Kier is way and above all our competitors in terms of how we're addressing carbon net zero? The answer is no. In short, we know our competitors are doing some really good things, and to be honest, they're driving us to get better as well. So it's a great environment, great industry to be involved in at the moment, as there's so much going on. What we feel we have developed though over the past year and are continuing to develop is a really robust approach to which will enable us to deliver a net zero for both our own business and for our clients. So our approach is embedded within the business, as Jade will talk about later. We've got MDs, our commercial directors involved, a lot of other people from a lot of other skill sets and delivery operations within the business. Transparent scope. When we say we're going to deliver net zero scope 1 and 2, it is scope 1 and 2. There's no little caveat saying not this or not that. Likewise with scope 3, it'll be everything for scope 3, and we'll come to that a bit later. So hopefully we can be trusted. Focused. There is so much going on in this area at the moment that it's very easy to get distracted. And while we will be picking up on innovations as we're going along and seeing what's going on, we really are planning this as a very phased and deliberate approach to delivering on our net zero aspirations. And again, Jade will be covering how we're doing this a bit later. So next slide, please. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, quick carbon 101. When we talk about carbon, we are meaning all the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur hexafluorine, and the others. Next slide, please. Scopes 1, 2, and 3. So scope 1 and 2, we are calling business operations carbon. So this is our direct fuel and electricity purchase, and it'll be our heating as well, and emissions from aircon as well. It accounts for about 15% of our carbon footprint within our business. The scope 3 side of things, it is our value chain carbon. This accounts for about 85% across our business. And of course, this is all the materials we buy in, electricity and fuel use from our subbies, the waste they might send away. So look at the differences there. Next slide, please. And again, when we talk about scope 1, these are the on-call protocol categories. Scope 1 is everything in there. Scope 2 is everything. And again, when we talk about scope 3, net zero scope 3, it is all those categories that you see on the slide there. So this, in terms of what we're doing at the moment, we have a net zero scope 3 target for 2045. This is later, as you'll see, than a lot of the other claims across the industry, not just this industry, other industries as well. But through an analysis of this, we found a lot of the time when people are saying we will be net zero, it may only be for certain elements. Net zero for fleet, for example, net zero for site fuel. In some cases, other construction companies, net zero only for their office-based operations. So there's quite a big difference there. But back to that bit on transparency, we're talking about everything in those particular scopes when we make our net zero claims. Next slide, please, Jade. Net zero, carbon neutral. We might use those terms interchangeably. Zero carbon, obviously no carbon emissions. And when we talk about scopes 1 and 2, that is our business operations carbon, and scope 3 being our value chain carbon. Some reference points, and these have really helped me through this journey, and talking with site teams as well. So here we have 360 litres of diesel is equivalent to a tonne, 4.7 cube of concrete, or 0.5 tonnes of steel, or 13 tonnes of granite aggregate, equivalent to a tonne of carbon. And there we have, this is approximately growth of 46 trees in a year, third of a home, or 6,000 vehicle kilometers for a standard car. So it's good to keep it, be aware of these when we're thinking about where do we need to have our focus areas when we're thinking of reducing our emissions. So that's our carbon 101. So we're all on the same page. Forgive me if this is old news to anyone, but I will now hand over to Jade. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Really good for a nice, clear introduction for us, so we all know that we're all talking about the same thing. So what I'm going to do, we're just going to talk very briefly about how Kier has got to where we are now, and then we're going to talk about what we've been working on over the last 18 months or so, and how we're setting out the framework to achieve that net zero delivery. So just to give you a little bit of we won't go into too much detail here. We've actually been reporting on carbon for quite some time. We had our first scored carbon disclosure project submission back in 2009. Our first actual submission was back in 2007. So we've been measuring, reporting, and declaring our carbon emissions for quite a period of time. In terms of statutory requirements, the first statutory requirement for us was the carbon reduction commitment, which came in 2010, and our first reporting year was 2011. So again, we complied with that every year up to the end of that scheme in 2019. And then moving on from there, we then had the mandatory greenhouse gas reporting that came in 2013. And it was at that point that Kier actually engaged a third party, Energize, a carbon consultant, to come and help us improve on our reporting so that we could ensure compliance, but also have that firm base for setting targets and reductions. Again, we've been reporting that data, the mandatory greenhouse gas reporting data, in our annual reports every year. And we're also complying with the Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme, which applies to Kier. So that's the scheme that works on a 4-year cycle, where you undertake a number of energy assessments across your business and identify recommendations, opportunities to improve your energy efficiency. So the next phase of that will be coming for us in 2023, as for everyone else in the scheme. And we are now in the streamlined energy and carbon reporting sphere as well. So very similar to the mandatory greenhouse gas reporting, with some additional bits and pieces on top of that. So this just sets out, as I said, the kind of voluntary and mandatory reporting requirements that we've had. So it just sets out, again, for us and many other businesses, looking at carbon, measuring and reporting on carbon has been something that we've been doing for a while, that has evolved over time. So within that context as well, what has Kier done in terms of reductions and improvements? Back in 2015, we launched our Vision 2020 Responsible Business Positive Outcomes strategy for a sustainable business. And in that particular strategy, we set a target for a 10% reduction in carbon emissions by 2020. achieved that the following year. So we actually achieved a 27% carbon reduction in that period of time. So we set ourselves again in 2017, we looked back at our data and our performance and set ourselves a more reaching target of 30% reduction by 2030. Of course, in 2019, the UK government declared climate emergency and set the net zero by 2050 target for the UK. And we were already looking at our previous commitments and realizing that we'd had to do something different. But at that point, we launched then our Building for a Sustainable World Net Zero by 2045 target. So where are we now? That brought us to today. What we now have is the sustainability framework that we call Building for a Sustainable World. So we've been working on this for about 18 months, 2 years now. We launched this formally last October, and we had launched it internally a little bit before that. And our Building for a Sustainable World framework sets out the key issues for us, both from an environmental sustainability and a social sustainability point of view, with carbon impact or net zero carbon being front and center of that, but also recognizing that carbon is not the only sustainability issue and the interlinkage there is between the various elements of our pillar, both the social and the environmental sustainability elements. So just to give that a bit of clout as well, it's very clear to us that our CEO, Andrew Davies, who joined Kier a couple of years ago now, sustainability is absolutely at the top of his agenda. So he's given us his full support since we started doing this, which has been absolutely great. Having that support and that understanding from the very top levels of the business has really helped us. And Andrew doesn't just know this in a little bit of superficial way. He's really interested in it. He understands it and he wants us to explain it to us as a team. So he's really got involved with the process. So talking about that governance structure, having Andrew there as the leader of our group sustainability leadership forum is absolutely vital. We've got that ExCo commitment right from the very top. We then also have set up our business stream sustainability leadership forum. So in Kier, it's really important to understand that our various businesses behave in quite different ways. They have very different carbon profiles. They have different sets of activities and different approaches. So we need to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing when we're setting our common direction of travel is flexible enough for each one of those businesses to then develop their own pathways and their methods for achieving that ultimate goal, while having that flexibility to do things a little bit differently from the other parts of the business. What we also then have is our working groups. So we have a series of working groups across the business, and these working groups, although they are led by environment and sustainability leads, they include people from various disciplines and from all elements of the business, all parts of the business. We really need to have that kind of cross communication. It's absolutely vital to us. We are very aware with an organisation the size of Kier that it can be a case of the same or similar activities being repeated in different places without people understanding that that's happening. So getting that network in place, pulling in those best practice examples and making sure that we're coordinating our activity makes all of this a far more efficient and effective process. So how are we approaching the carbon management side of things? Well, throughout our entire sustainability framework, we've set ourselves, in effect, a 3-year plan. So our first year was comply. We've just reached the end of our first year. Our second year is compete, and our third year is champion. We, again, wanted to have in place that really methodical process for understanding our current position, building our improvement, and then really championing our progress. So first year, consolidated approach to data collection, making sure that we've got everything working as efficiently as possible. This year, we already have our targets for scope 1 and 2. We're setting out our pathways to net zero for scopes 1, 2 and 3 and establishing the detailed benchmarks and targets that we're going to need to have in place to achieve that. And then from this year onwards, we will be setting ourselves progressively more challenging targets and moving into that leading innovation space that we hope to be in. that little graphic there just sets out how we are approaching the different scopes of carbon. So in our first year, as we say, really focusing on the scope 1 and 2, getting our systems right, understanding the methodologies and the processes we'll need to develop the scope 3 data capture, and then moving all of that progressively forward over time. So that data approach, I mean, you would have thought that data collection is a basic, easy thing to do. Again, it depends on the size and scale of your business, I'm sure, but certainly within Kier, there have been some interesting challenges around even some of the most basic data collections. So making sure that all of our systems, so our purchasing systems for fuel, for electricity, are set up correctly, that the cost codes that we have in the systems are aligned, that the fuel and energy usage data is going directly to our carbon consultants, so that we can actually make sure that we've captured everything. And over time, we're improving that, and it's been an interesting journey, as I say. It's helping us also to look at our commercial systems, so understanding how we can make our processes and systems work better for us. So over time, as I say, we are developing the detail and the granularity around our data reporting, so that we will get to the ability to have all of our data in one place, consolidated together, but you can view it and cut and change it in any way that you might want to. So what does it take to produce our carbon footprint? And this graphic, even in itself, things are moving so fast. This is probably a little old now, and probably it's even more than this. But certainly our carbon partner Energize, that puts our greenhouse gas reporting data together for us. As I say, they've been working with us for quite some time now, which is very helpful. They know the intricacies of our business, they know how we work, and they know how challenging we can be. But we have at the moment even just over 900 electricity meters with half-hourly data coming straight into our systems, over 200 gas supplies, 173,000 refuels of fuel on our fuel cards, and then 498,000 mileage claims and 7,000 deliveries of fuel, and that's in any one quarter. So overall, we're looking at 1.4 million data sets in any quarter that are being processed for us. So the size and scale of the task is huge, and the scope for error is also large. So getting this right is absolutely vital, making sure that the processes are in place, the data is correct, and it is verified and regularly reviewed. So we capture all of that data, and we capture both the carbon data and the data from the other elements of our Building for a Sustainable World framework. We have KPIs for a number of those elements. We like to capture that all together in one place, and we like to make sure that that can be available and presented to the whole business, so that it is transparent. So we have our cost of water, cost of carbon, cost of waste, and cost of incidents data, and it all sits in a nice Power BI dashboard. And this is actually used. This isn't just sitting there as a data repository that no one goes in. This data is extracted, it goes into our regular business meetings, it goes into our board SHE committee, and it goes into our ExCo reports. So the business really is scrutinizing our progress. Again, we go down into a bit more detail on the carbon data. So again, splitting scope 1 and 2 as you'd expect, and comparing our different businesses. And again, it's really understanding that there are those differences in the different parts of the business. And so far, our net zero progress this year, based on what we've set out last year, is looking very good. Obviously, we have a little bit more data to capture for our final quarter of the year, but so far progress is looking good. So in terms of our scope 1 and 2 carbon profile, scope 1 and 2, as Tom mentioned, is actually really only about 10 to 15% of our overall carbon footprint. But looking at just the split of our scope 1 and 2, a significant proportion of that is sitting in our fleet. And that is the case for certain parts of our business more than others. So we have a highways division of our business, and we have a utilities part of our business. Those parts of the business, the carbon footprint very much sits in the fleet side. In the construction and infrastructure side, more so of that sits on site in the fuel and energy that we purchase to use on site. But as we mentioned, that 90% scope 3, that is the much larger piece of information. And what we've been working on, particularly in the last few months, is identifying the data capture processes that we need, the methodologies that we need, and what data gaps we had or what methodology gaps we had. It turned out actually when we looked at our whole scope of scope 3, all of the emissions categories we have in scope 3, there was actually only a couple of those where we really had to put in a new process in order to capture that data. Most of that scope 3 data is available in some form or other already, so we just had to make sure that we can access it to get it into our overall carbon footprint. So we've set out on the basis of where we are now a series of interim targets that we're going to be hitting in the next few years. These will be very familiar to a lot of you. I'm sure you will have seen the similar commitments that people are signing up to. So 65% in reduction in our scope 1 and 2 over the next decade. And that is a pure reduction, no offsetting involved in that at all. We're looking for net zero offices by 2030. So that's all buildings within our direct control. 100% renewable energy across our operations by 2030. And again, we're actually very progressed against that already. We already purchased 100% renewable energy, but we do have some situations where, of course, we have client supply or free of charge supply. So we're just looking at how to understand that and how to incorporate that into our reporting or not. And we're looking at electrified fleet by 2030, on-site net zero carbon by 2040, and value chain 1.5 degree pathway, reducing embodied carbon by 40% by 2030. So again, people would be very familiar with these as a set of commitments within this sort of industry. But what this really does as well is it just sets out the minimum pace that our business can go at. So these are the absolute minimum targets we will be achieving. We are expecting to achieve many of these earlier than the dates that we've set. So really digging into that carbon pathway to net zero for Kier, as I've said, it's really a case of understanding the carbon emissions of each part of the business, really understanding how those different businesses operate. And then we have collated all of that data together and set out our net zero pathway to achieve all of those commitments from the previous slide. And we're now able to say that we are going to achieve our scope 1 and 2 net zero carbon pathway by 2039. Again, we're aware that may be a little bit later than some of our competitors may have set, but we are scope 1 and 2 2039 with no offsetting as well. So we're very clear that that's to be with no offsetting involved. For us, the focus really wants to be on the reduction and the energy efficiency at the front end, with offsetting really as the last step that we put in place where we need to. So as I said, net zero carbon by 2039 for scope 1 and 2. And we're now in the process where we are really putting the actions in place to deliver. So we've done all of the baseline data. We've really been into the detail of what we've got and where, making sure that it's all correct. And now we're putting together the plans to deliver those targets. Many of these things, again, already in place or had already progressed to a certain point. But all of our business has now been provided, in effect, with a shopping list of carbon reduction activities based on their specific profile of carbon emissions. So we're looking at fleet, we're looking at telematics, etc. Again, we already have that in some parts of the business, but it's about understanding where that's working and then extrapolating that more widely across the business. The driver engagement and behaviour change campaigns that we're already putting in place. One particular part of our business identified a potential £34,000 saving just from preventing idling. So they're putting a specific campaign in place to deal with that. In terms of sites, again, procuring renewable energy, we already do that through our main suppliers. But it's a case of making sure that all of those little sites that may not have procured through that particular route are taken into account as well. We're looking to transition generators to grid supply or use alternative fuels, sizing generators correctly. All of these things will be very familiar with people. And it's just, as I say, a case of each business now understanding what is the priority for them. And again, offices, we've already done work over the years on offices. We've done a number of LED replacement schemes to reduce our energy demand at offices. And again, we're looking at that more widely across the business. But the key point here is that we really have got a fully coordinated approach now across the whole business. Where we had a lot of activity happening before, it may have been a little isolated. It was good activity, absolutely nothing wrong with it, doing some really good things. But now we've pulled all that together. We have a single direction of travel, and each of our businesses has the same approach to achieving their overall targets. So the action plans we're putting in place, this is just a sort of draft template at the moment, with the actual cost, the investment costs that are going to be required over the next few years. And again, it's making sure that this isn't an isolated activity that's being worked on just by a sustainability team somewhere. The commercial and finance teams are absolutely bought into this process. So understanding what investments are going to be needed in the business in the next couple of years, and then in the longer term as well. So our net zero milestones, as I said, so 2019, FY19 for us is our baseline year. We've got the 65% reduction in scope 1 and 2 by 2030, net zero offices, 100% renewable energy and electrified fleets. And then our net zero scope 1 and 2, 2039. And then our ultimate net zero scope 1, 2 and 3, our whole business operations and value chain by 2045. So just to go back to Tom now, Tom's going to talk a little bit now about some of the tools and innovations that we've already been putting in place, and again how we are sort of pooling the knowledge and information about this to have a more coordinated approach. Tom.
Thanks, Jade. Thanks, that was really great. Thank you. So yeah, as I go through this, it'd be great to hear what other people on this call might be doing as well when we get into the discussion session. So we've been working with Gap and Sunbelt over the last year. Two of our preferred suppliers who have put together now some eco brochures for us, and these basically set out all the new innovative hybrid electric renewables based kit that we can access with comparison to the standard items of kit as well. So in the brochures, for example, next you can just click on Jade. The Gap, well, both brochures, for example, this one's the Gap one here, shows a comparison of standard tower lights, for example, to the new renewables eco tower lights in terms of fuel use or carbon reduction. So we can, it's kind of single point of information for the site teams to help, better informed choices. And in there as well is, noise as well. So they can make choices knowing, with all that information being provided in these brochures. We have also developed, if you can get on, so Sunbelt, low carbon compound solutions, again, just trying to tie in everything they are able to offer us across their equipment and plant portfolio. And this will help us develop our action plans and help sites understand what they can actually do on the ground. We've also developed we here, one of our carbon manager, Jenna Bates in our construction team, a carbon tool. So this is used for optioneering forecasting, looking at plant and equipment on site. How much plant and equipment might we use, and what are the impacts on that, and increasing numbers or decreasing numbers and time on site in terms of cost and also carbon. And then what's the impact of using electric alternatives, or what's the impact of using HVO, for example? You can just plug in the figures here really quickly, and it draws on some of the costs and carbon figures from our suppliers. We've also developed our trials and innovation tracker. One of the issues we were coming across is that, because we've got a number of business streams, all the business streams are off doing their own things, setting up trials, using some of this equipment on site and not talking to each other as effectively as they should do. With the result, well, quite often we were doing exactly the same things on different sites and not actually knowing about it. So we set this up to try to just share what each of those business streams or projects are doing, in the hope that we could share the results from these, where things have gone well, maybe not so well, and then we could look at others to run the trial and then work on the back of that rather than running exactly the same thing from the same supplier in parallel. So some of the successes, our Some Blazy project team using HVO to power site cabins down there. So, that's given us a return on about 10 kilograms of carbon reduction per pound invested. So, at a cost of an extra £220 a month, we've got a 2,600 kilo reduction in carbon. Site setup, solar pole on one of our sites on our, again, southwest. This is our South Parrot site. We've got an estimated carbon saving here. Well, calculated carbon saving of 1,500 kilograms for the first 2 weeks in use. at an additional cost there of £89 a week for using a solar pod. So really good return there. And the guys have, really noticed a difference, not just in fuel use, but also in operating on a quiet site as well, where there isn't this continual hum of a generator in the background. Another site, Budley Salterton, we've got generator backed up by a battery hybrid power unit, plus an array of 12 solar panels. And we're also using HVO on that. When the generator does kick in. For the first week, it was running sunny all the time, absolutely no generator use. It was purely solar and battery. Second week, pretty overcast. And again, we did manage to run off battery and solar for that one with very minimal generator kicking in. Obviously, when it did kick in, we're using HVO. The exact results from that I should be getting in the next day or so. And on our construction sites, we trial this use of this flybrid flywheel unit to power up to support power one of our tower cranes, and doing that enabled us to reduce the generator size for the power crane from a 350 to a 325 kVA generator down to a 100 kVA generator. So big cost savings there, and saving 240 litres of fuel a week as well, with a reduction in 2.5 tonnes of carbon per month. So some great returns there, and some good successes. And, a number of these will be rolling these out across more of our projects as they come online. So next slide, please. Just to wrap up this session before we go into some Q&A and wider discussion. So transparency. Governance. Start with governance and accountability. Key thing there, getting the support structures right. They've been in place for a year now. Did they work straight away? No. But now we are having conversations we were never able to have a year, 2 years ago, with the people we're now having them with, our MDs involved, our commercial directors in these groups, people, on these working groups, so carbon focus groups, people from all over the business coming in with their ideas and actioning their ideas and making things happen. And so that collaboration piece has been absolutely critical. Data, getting foundations right for data has been really important. And as Jay said, a lot of hard work actually. And we're still working on getting this absolutely right. But we feel now we have a very good foundation on which to move forward, to set our targets, knowing we're setting them against a decent set of data gathered over the last year. And transparency. This is improved conversations with site teams about what we're doing and where we're going. We're not having to throw in a load of caveats. And also, hopefully, it will improve conversations with our clients and peers within our industry as well. Methodical approach. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff going on across the industry at the moment, and there's a lot to get distracted by. And personally, I've been distracted by the next fancy thing coming along in the past, but really trying to avoid distraction. Not saying we won't try to pick up on new stuff coming along, but try to develop a plan as we have done and really stick to the plan. So we can build up the whole business together. Obviously, in some parts of the business, we've got some project. HS2, for example, are kind of already in the champion phase. They've got some fantastic work going on there in the southwest. For the Environment Agency, again, some brilliant work, which may be a part above other parts of the business. But if we can bring everyone up together, then projects can have conversations on the same levels together. And when we introduce new things, we're introducing them across the whole business rather than different bits of the business at different times. So, these are some of the key things we've been learning or developing over the past 18 months, 2 years. So with that, thank you very much, Jay. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to go on to a few of the questions before we move on to the session. Now, some of these questions here I would like to put into wider discussion for the people on this call. So I'll just start at the top here. Do include the cost amount of carbon used to make the solar panels and batteries, i.e. the extraction of the materials, in your carbon costs? No, we haven't at the moment. to be honest, the information on that is hard to come by. So at the moment, all we've included in that is the carbon reduction based on fuel use reduction. On the basis that, I suppose, maybe naively at the moment, and hopefully we'll improve this information, if we are using, say, for example, a solar pod rather than something else, both items of kit have to be made. So it's not, we're not using kit where we haven't used it before. I know that's probably not good enough if we're looking at the whole life cycle assessment of carbon, and we will have to pick that up and be more robust in that approach later. But that is a level of maturity, to be honest, where we're not at the moment, and I don't think our supply chain aren't there either at the moment. So this is something we're going to have to develop over time. Going down, one here about there's a big difference between scope 1 and 2 and scope 3 carbon. So this is reflecting the 15% for scope 1 and 2 across our business and the 85% carbon footprint for scope 3. Within there, other actions which provide less benefits than others but are highly visible, and how important are they? I'd say this is a balance we're continually working on. Obviously, we're doing, the focus at the moment is on scope 3, but there's a huge amount of scope 3 we need to do. Concrete and steel, critical ones there, and working with our supply chain to reduce that. But then there's many others which may provide very minimal benefits, but to the teams working on site, this will help engender a behavior change, and help them be part of the plan. Because it's very easy, I think, to be discussing these, a lot of these things at a strategic level, getting the business set up, working in the background to get our data right, working out our waste contracts. And if they can't actually be seen by the teams on the ground, the general perception is we're doing nothing. And actually, this has been interesting. We recently had feedback from our sustainability attitude survey. And one, it's very good. There's still many people in the business who don't understand what they can do or if Kier is doing anything. So actually having visible things going on the ground to help, the people can be involved in and see what is going on and show that we are making progress is I think really important. And it helps us have better conversations. I know, Jade.
I'd agree with that. I think it's the carbon reduction obviously is a key priority for us, but Tom's absolutely right. When it comes to the culture of the business and getting people's buy-in, yes, some of these other things that we're doing may be less of value in terms of the carbon reduction, but the other value that we get from them is really important. And for us, again, we as Tom just mentioned, we just did a sustainability attitude survey across the business. There's a lot of excellent intention. People are really ready to do things about sustainability. A lot of people feel that they are fairly knowledgeable already, if not very knowledgeable. But the practical actions bit is the bit where people want more. They want more guidance. They want more information about what they can individually do to help us towards our overall goals. So yeah, absolutely. I think there are some things that we may do that may not give us the biggest return on carbon, but it changes that culture. It gets that buy-in, and it makes things much more visible down on the ground. And again, Kier, we're a very large organisation. I would say that our most senior management teams, our directors, our board are all absolutely entirely bought in. Most people out on the ground doing the work actually want to make a difference. They want to make the change. They want to do things differently. It's the bit in the middle sometimes that we struggle with, about making sure that the message gets all the way down through the business, that people's voices at the coalface, if you like, are heard. And a big part of our survey was about getting ideas from people about what they wanted to do to improve. And we're working now on doing some work on showing them what we already have in relation to what they asked for and what we're also working on. So making sure that the whole programme is visible and that we do engage with people, and when people make suggestions or improvements or comments, that they do get heard, and they do hear something back from us.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. And there's a question here about well, there's a couple of questions actually, which rather than trying to answer myself, I'd like to put out to the rest of the people on this session. And so has much in how much influence do announcements by other companies, competitors or clients have on the pace of change implemented in your organizations? So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. Any examples from your organizations?
Just while we're waiting for people to jump in, so it's an interesting one in Kier. I'd say 2 years ago, what other people were doing didn't seem to be bothering anyone, but I'd say now, every time there's an announcement in the press about what somebody else is doing, our team will get contacted. What are we doing? Are we doing a similar thing? Are we doing something like this? And not just our competitors or clients, it's our investors as well. Our investors have really started to ask a lot tougher questions about what we're doing and where we're going. Yes, it has an influence, but fundamentally, as we tried to set out, I think in this presentation, we're not doing this for the PR. We're doing this because we want to get to net zero. It's the only way our business is going to be sustainable in the long term. It's the only way we're going to stay in business is by being competitive, not just in this arena, but in the wider sustainability arena. So yeah, it's not just a PR stunt. It's not about giving sound bites to the construction press about what we're doing. It's about really building those foundations, those processes internally, and delivering our strategy for ourselves to be a viable business, but also obviously delivering for our clients and delivering for our investors as well.
In terms of the clients there, about how much influence the clients have, I mean, Southwest, the Environment Agency, one of our framework clients, they've got a 2030 net zero target. And we have just, over the last year, we've developed these 5 carbon principles to roll out on construction sites. And, so a lot of the good examples, we were just talking about, so the solar panels and the solar pod and the HVO, they come from the Environment Agency sites, because the Environment Agency have committed to, in some cases, paying the green premium of these carbon reductions. So, we expect to see some really, we are seeing some really great examples of work, carbon reduction coming out from that framework under the Environment Agency. And we will be taking those in, across the rest of our business, and likewise, where we have other clients pushing in other areas of the business, we will be able to take that back into our other projects, such as the Environment Agency projects, where, there is essentially an open door to get things done. So yeah, really exciting. And I think what we sometimes see as well is there's a bit of a difference in dialogue between what the client's saying they want. We want to do this, what we want to do this. When we get to a project level, with I'm seeing some of the conversations drying up. In terms of, say, carbon reduction, what we need to do is just try to, help the client, the project level, to link that back to their corporate aspirations and to make things happen. And I think the more good working examples and successes we get, that's going to accelerate, like a growing snowball, essentially, just gathering pace and momentum. So I think, it's going to be, I'm genuinely really excited about what we're going to see over the next year. And actually, I think all of the environment team is, and actually many parts of the business are as well, because I think I'm really, we're kind of at a tipping point. And I've been working with Kier for 10 years. Honestly, could I have said that 4 years ago? No. But now it's looking really good. So other people on this call here, that influenced by other companies, what's your feelings on that? Okay. We'll move on to another question then, and we'll put it out there as well. Are designers going far enough to develop low carbon designs? And are you being given sufficient opportunity pre and or post tender to influence and develop low carbon designs? It depends. Different contract setups, design and build, or just construction side of things. It's highly variable, to be honest. And I think in many cases, so I feel this isn't going to be the great answer, but there we go. I think in many cases we're given opportunity to, to build efficient designs and low cost designs, and we are achieving those low carbon designs through that. So they're not necessarily, put as we want, the carbon reductions, and that iterative design process. We are delivering low carbon designs as part of delivering, more efficient, cost wise and materials wise designs, if that makes sense. In many cases, though, where we have a collaborative design and construction framework, yes, we have opportunities to work with the designers, to influence the designs based on constructability. I think we are still finding hurdles, though, to what we're doing, such as, say, through some of the old minimum technical standards, such as concrete mixes, for example. That on the one hand, we're saying, okay, we want to have a low carbon design here, but this is the minimum concrete specifications you've got to use, which actually don't fit in with delivering. Those low carbon designs don't offer enough flexibility. So I think we've got to, the earlier we can engage with clients and designers and our supply chain about that, the better we're able to influence and deliver low carbon designs. And I know through, our KPS, for example, Kier Professional Services, they delivered some fantastic savings, through very, minor design changes. Lincoln Lock provides a great example on the slab in this fish pass, just providing some pressure relief slots at the edge of the slab, significantly reduce the amount of steel reinforcement and concrete we had to putting down there, resulting in massive carbon savings. So yeah, there's some good things going on. I think we just need to keep this dialogue going and start early. Jade?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say again, I think given the sort of variation in Kier's activities and scope of work and clients, it's a different picture in different parts of the business. Absolutely, some of our clients are really switched on and are driving us and pushing us. Some of us, it's a little bit the other way around. So it's in some cases we are taking what we are doing to the client to try and influence them a little more. That's what you would expect, I think, with the range of clients that we have. And that's why we think that this robust approach of comply, compete and champion really works for us, because it gives us the foundation to be able to, as I say, take in the knowledge of those more progressive clients, the ones that have the bigger ideas about where they want to go and how fast they want to do it. And then we can really use that information to bring a wider range of clients along with us as well. In some cases, it can be quite tricky. I think Tom sort of alluded to, you have a client that may have a great aspiration for carbon reduction, but perhaps not the detailed knowledge of what that practically means for them, and we're there to fill that gap for them. So yeah, it's an interesting range, but definitely seeing huge changes in the sort of questions that we're being asked around carbon and carbon emissions in the last couple of years. It's been quite a progression.
Thank you. Question come in. Could contractors take steps to create a waste register where you can express interest in waste materials from one site for useful use at another, say collaborative circular economy working? A couple of examples of that already in place. Obviously, the Clare materials register, where you can register as this for excavating materials as a materials donor or a materials receiver, and essentially swap sites between projects. Using the Clare protocol. We had success of that down on our Helston project, where we imported, I forget how much material. Adrian, can you step in? How much did we imported a whole lot of cohesive material from a nearby development site after testing into Helston to support the flood defence works down there. So that's already in place. There are a number of other share portals as well. Supply Chain Sustainability School has a map of all the essentially swap shops, construction-based swap shops across the UK. Globe Chain is another good one. Essentially, they're a donor material swap shop, not just for the construction industry, but for everyone else. They've got a database of, it must have grown since my last conversation, 50, 60,000 receivers, with the idea that any surplus materials you have, or anything you don't want, any waste materials, you take a photo, you put a quick description on there, and that goes out to anyone you wanted to go out to. So schools, charities, other construction companies, internally in your own company, and they get a notification it's available, and then arrange to come and pick it up. On Crossrail a few years ago, we got rid of 200 meters of plastic sheeting by putting it on there within 24 hours. So it's remarkable what people do want. But I think we definitely have to get better at using this. And I kind of feel, rather like the telex machines or mobile phones of old, that actually, we need to get that critical mass of people using this. And as a company, I think, say, for example, if we're going to adopt Globe Chain, we don't adopt it just on one site or two sites. We need to go all in, to make it work. And then again, it gathers that momentum.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. This one, it's something it crops up every couple of years, doesn't it? In terms of what we're going to do internally about materials exchange. So we do actually have some people looking at this at the moment. What the barriers are. And how we're going to try and get over those barriers. But one of the other things just to mention there, because I've got my compliance hat on as well, when we're swapping materials and surplus materials, we do need to be very careful about, we are not just giving waste to other people. Surplus material is a good, genuine surplus material that can be reused elsewhere. So obviously we need to tick a few boxes around compliance as well. But absolutely, even within Kier, materials exchange within Kier can be difficult, and again, it's that siloed nature potentially of how we work. So we have a construction business, highways, utilities, etc. The construction business may not know that there's a utility site very close to them. So we're also working on our own internal communication to try and make sure that we can preferably exchange materials within Kier, but then also look at how to exchange materials better outside of Kier. But yeah, also just thanks, Tom, for mentioning the supply chain sustainability school work that they did. That's an excellent piece of work that maps all the existing materials exchange schemes that there are in the UK, and if you know about any that aren't on there, you can also fill in a form to get them registered on there. So it's designed to be a single point of truth in terms of being able to find that kind of information anywhere in the country. So yeah, definitely one we're working on as part of our wider zero avoidable waste strategy.
Thank you, Jade. Mark, I'm keenly aware of time here. I think we might nearly be well, I think we should be finishing, shouldn't we? But Mark, did you want to come on and raise anything? No? Okay. Well, I think our time is up now, isn't it, Jade?
If I put myself off mute. Yeah, we do have an opportunity here for just another few minutes of, if anyone's had any particular challenges in their business that they've overcome, or any examples of where you've found solutions to things that you wanted to bring up. It would be really helpful if you want to pull any of those through, or if you'd like to come and speak about that. I think the key thing for us today was to make it very clear that we may not appear to be at the forefront of everything in terms of carbon, but we feel our approach is really robust. It's really collaborative. It's really got that governance structure overarching to make sure that we deliver. So, as I say, I think that sets out the really strong foundations for us to make real changes, and certainly not to using our sort of carbon pathway as a kind of PR exercise. It's not about that. It's absolutely about delivering for ourselves, our clients, and our investors.
Thanks, Jade. I think that one. Do we have any suppliers on the call? Say tier 2, tier 3 contractors. I was just looking at this question for suppliers. What changes have you seen that tier 1 contractors ask for? And I think really, what would you like to see us ask for to enable your transition to net zero carbon, and what support do you need? If we haven't got any suppliers on the call, then we can leave that one. But I think that covers all the questions. So I think I think at this point, I think it'd be worth wrapping up. I think if anyone does have any questions, you know, or would just like to stay on the call just for a catch up, please do so. Or any questions, you know, our contact details. Jade, if you just want to, are you able to flag up the contact details slide from the beginning? If you'd like to contact us, give us a call, send us an email. Yeah, please do. And thank you very much for your time in attending this session. And we look forward to meeting you face to face, perhaps in the future. Thank you.